Patriots Across the Pond, episode 39, and today we have an amazing guest who needs no introduction, Gene Decode. But I've got his bio here, so I'm just going to read this out reasonably quickly if I can. Co-Sensei Gene is a 20-plus year veteran of the US Navy submarine fleet. He is a 45-plus year martial arts instructor, sensei, as well as a lifelong student and practitioner of naturopathic medicine. He has dedicated most of his life to the investigation and research of information pertaining to all things spiritual, health, physical, mental and emotional, social, political and metaphysical. He was born with skilled remote viewing and psychic abilities that have steered his life. In August of 1990, Gene had an epiphany in which he suddenly realised the existence and massive influence of the satanic deep state cabal. Gene immediately began massive research to disprove this. However, everything he found only made it more obvious. Gene then enlisted several of his martial arts students to disprove his account. Not only could they not disprove what he learned, they confirmed it through credible sources. In a death experience in August of 1992, he died for 30 minutes. He met God, and after taking a holy covenant, God allowed him to return to be of service to humanity, the earth, and God's creation. Throughout Gene's life, he has had many events that have changed his life and its course. Looking back, Gene now sees this as the hand of God steering his life. This series of events led Gene to embark on a continuing path of discovery in his lifelong quest to attain the absolute truth in all things through decoding the lies we've all been conditioned to believe. Through the course of many interviews and decodes shared with the world, Gene Co-Sensei was given the name Gene Decode. Gene, welcome, sir. How are you? You're mute.
I'm doing pretty good considering all things, or as they say, all things considered.
Well, it's we're living in a very exciting time, aren't we now?
Say again?
We are living in a very exciting time now, aren't we?
Yeah. It's mind-bogglingly exciting and fast-paced, and I mean, it gets to, a lot of news sources I used to love for the regular news. I can't listen to them anymore because they're not awake. And it's just like, you're making me lose my mind. They're talking about things in the way a regular person sees things, which is now closing in on just like 5/8 of the human race, 3/8 because of the Epstein files, is now awake to what's going on in the world. And that, most of that is the major part of people that are delving into that are the young people from 14 to 21 that are just, even changing the code and finding other stuff in there. And, I was going to do a cover on my website I do a bi-weekly news update called News Talk of stuff in the Epstein files. But way back when they first, for a brief period of time, unleashed YouTube and the search engines so you could find anything like Barry Santoro and Michael Von Robinson and that stuff. I found actually God steered me in. I'm techie illiterate, but darn near steered me into the deep web, and I watched Frazzle Drip, and it took me 3 days to be able to sleep from that. I couldn't stop crying, and I try to lay down, and I'd start to have, as soon as I start to doze off, I had terrible nightmares. So I'm not going to do it because it is so sick, depraved, and evil off the chart. Even with what I woke up to in 1990 and when God showed me everything, He didn't show me that stuff. So it's so disturbing and so sickening and disgusting. It's just that too. You have to be possessed and have no soul to do that stuff. So, it's exciting, but it's also very disturbing to find out the depths. I knew they were infiltrated, the deep state was infiltrated, the satanic Zionist filth were infiltrated into every organization, every government, although they're not governments, they're corporations on Earth, and every military. I found that out too in my military career, but I had no idea like a lot of people are waking up to, the depth of how many Satanists are on Earth. It's like, holy smoke, man, did they get vast in their numbers. So it's an amazing thing, and the way they're doing it is the White Hats, the Alliance, is a drip, drip, drip. Still, although it seems like a floodgate's been opened, we've only seen 2% of the Epstein files. So the way they're doing it is to make an indelible impression in the young children and the young people of the world, so they will never, ever let this happen again. And once this mess is cleaned up, this filth is removed. Most part, it is removed. We're watching a movie for the most part with actors, like Trump says, central casting, central casting, central.
Right.
You look at real raw news, you can see all the people have been executed, and Trump himself has said, Biden was executed in 2019.
Yeah.
Getting the numbers inverted there. double number of dyslexia. So anyway, that's I totally agree with you. We're in just, I never ever thought when I first came on this in 1990 that they would be able to be taken down, that because of the vastness of what they were infiltrated into every corporation, company, or government, if you want to call them that, every military on Earth, every organization, a lot of presidents, and presidents have not been what we thought, like Bush, who's Sheriff, who was Nazi. Is this on YouTube? I should say in AZI. You might want to edit that out.
No, you can put whatever you say, whatever you like, Gene. It's going to rumble.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nazi, So, and that's another thing I found out. I researched the main groups involved in this, and it's, even when you're looking at things like Admiral Byrd's diaries, you got to pay attention because there's little, like, comms that make you understand what's really in there. There's things that they say, then if you're thinking, you go, wait a minute, that can't be quite right. So, what I woke up to in 1990, when this all came and dawned on me, is that, I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but almost everything I ever learned was a lie. So having a high, top secret clearance, standing command duty officer, I was having to inventory every safe in the command, both on Fort Island and the main part of Pearl Harbor. So I said, well, I have to page check every document. Might as well read them. I was even taking other people's duty, so I had more time, and making a little extra cash on the side. They loved it. And then I would go to the Supreme Court Law Library in Honolulu and research there too in the congressional budget, which I knew right where to go to look, because I kind of woke up to this in a way that I don't know if anybody's woke up to it like this. Like you said in my bio that you read, I have a kind of abilities I don't think a lot of people have. I'm sure people do, but I don't know if many people are aware of themselves on Antimatter Earth. I am. I always have been. And so on that Earth, I'm in the resistance. We go through tunnels getting into these slave camps trying to wake people up, which was hopeless until about 1998, 99. And then it started to change over there. But a person here said something to me, which I had never heard on this Earth, which is strange. The word Mason. And I later found out I have 33rd degree and above in my own family. And most families do. You have people in your family that have been in this filth, this Masonic filth, as Colonel Bossi very aptly puts it. Very few people, you get to a 32nd degree. If you pass the test, you go to 33rd, then you know what's really going on in there. But it's terrible. So when I came upon that word, it was like a bucket of ice water over my head, because on Antimatter Earth, they run the camps. They're the first level of power. And we don't even say that word inside the tunnels in our secret areas. We just say, the ones that work for the pointy heads, because, you have the Alpha Draco at the next level up, and then you have AI above that and other things too. So it's just, to see it come down to this now, to be actually coming out, boggles my mind that it's actually coming out. But, with the average person that's doing newscasting and things like that I like to follow before, I can't usually follow it anymore, because when they're not awake and they talk about stuff, like we went down and removed kidnapped a president of a country. Well, first of all, Venezuela's a corporation. It's not a country. There aren't any. Second of all, we didn't kidnap him. He wanted to leave.
Yeah.
He wants to be held hostage. And so there's so many things like, did Epstein kill himself? No, he's still alive. He never went to prison. When they cleaned Epstein Island, the military, they took him too. The largest security risk on Earth, with the most information on everything, you're not going to trust him. So they removed him. The White Hats have had him ever since then. So, I mean, there's so many things going on that people don't read the comms. I love to watch Colonel Bossy on JM Media, I think it is, with
John Michael Chambers.
Yeah, because they say it as it is, and they tell you the truth, and they tell you what's going on, and they have an idea, and they know, the Q board and that stuff. I don't have it memorized per post, but I know everything that was on it. And when it first came out, actually, on 4chan, before the board in 2014, it was Mega Q. I was working on my back deck, and God said, blow off the dust with your leaf blower and go in. I'm taking you on the dark web. And so he took me in, and I saw Frazzled Rep was the first thing, which was extremely disturbing. And then I saw the just this board, not a board, but endless questions that just come every hour or two, more and more questions. And a lot of the questions were somebody with a top secret and above clearance. Things that I didn't think hardly anybody on Earth knew, like Solar Warden, Radiant Guardian, Radiant Glory, Outposts, Ganymede, etc., and the actual name of Looking Glass, and all of this different technologies and things. And I'm like, holy smoke, what is this? I wish I copied all of it. I copied the little post, but not the whole thing. And then it was 2 years later, we came out with the regular Q boards. And, I already knew most of that from my years of research, like yourself. I'm sure you knew too. But it's just an amazing time to watch this come down now, because when I woke up to this in 90, I never thought it would be possible. Back to you.
Yeah, well, I'll just say quickly on that I got to about 2014, 2015. I'd been trying to wake people up for over 10 years. I was getting banned and lambasted, mocked, all sorts of things. And I just thought, I've got no chance, right? I've just got to sit back, let this new world order come in and go, I told you so. But then came Trump in 2016, and then came Q, and it sort of like changed it all around. It was amazing.
Yeah, not only that, but because of my automatic remote viewing abilities. From a child, I had nightmares of the camps, the FEMA camps.
Yeah.
And I was in a spiritual group, and I said, are we going to live in, what's the point of all this? We're going to live in FEMA camps if you survive what's coming after the nuclear war. She goes, that's not happening. And I was like, no, I've seen it all my life. From a baby, I'd have dreams of it. So I knew that when Hillary got in, she was going to cause a nuclear war. And sure enough, she got in 2016. And, 3-4 years before that, I told my wife, let's see the world. And let's get a really beautiful home overlooking up on the mountainside, looking down on the city, and beautiful. And let's get a really nice 4x4. And she goes, how are we going to afford all that? Yeah, I mean, see every corporation on Earth, right? Every country. And she goes, I said, roll the credit cards. Let them roll. Borrow, because it's not going to matter in 4 years. And sure enough, we were up in our beautiful home. I was on my back deck looking over the city and up my hot tub, and boom, the morning, sunrise was coming up, and boom, a cloud went up over the city. I go, yep. And then the next thing I knew, I was in my little apartment in 2008. I sat up, and what has happened? And God told me, I reset the timeline, because they never showed, they have to show ahead of time what they're going to do, that they're going to completely destroy all life on the surface of the planet, every single living thing. And I was like, yeah, I thought I saw camps and stuff. They said, exactly. That you had several different series where, like Jericho, I think, was one where they destroyed some stuff or a lot of stuff, but never everything. So then I was like, okay. I told my wife, let's get a nice little house a used 4x4, you know, because I saw that things had changed, and I'm like, maybe there's a chance here. So in 2008, I relived 8 years, but I said, well, maybe there's something. So when I saw the Mega Q at 2014, I was like, something's up. Who's ever writing this? Really high clearance. And then I learned about researching hard about the alliance and all of that. So that's where we are now. Back to you.
Yeah, well, I wanted to just ask you, Gene, I completely understand remote viewing. Not that I can do it, but I understand that. But can you just explain just a little bit about this antimatter Earth? Because I'm not sure I really understand that, or our viewers really understand what that's about.
Yes. So let's go to physics to explain this.
Okay.
So for every particle, you have an opposite charge particle that does the same thing, but it's in a completely 180-degree phase reversal. So that means an electron would be a positron. Instead of having a negative charge, it would have a positive charge. So you have a universe that's a balance of this universe. And CERN has discovered this just recently. And there's a weird thing about the balance that they've discovered too, which I knew all this stuff because of living that every night I would go to sleep, I'd wake up there, from the day I was born, So I was like, and it's not a fun place. And I kept having crossovers. First built Huey helicopter, and I'm like, I've seen that before on this Earth. Then they had the lasers come in. I'm like, I've seen that before. Yeah, I've been chased with a Huey helicopter with a laser on it before. I know all about this stuff. And then I would start to meet people. So every person, for the most part, is you've got a duplicate self over there that you're quantumly entangled to. And most people are not aware of that. And most people are aware of other universes that are based on different decisions, what they call timelines. So every possible decision you can make, you have made. And if it's significantly makes a difference in the way you are, you wind up actually going to a separate timeline. And so the process of ascension is actually for the things that you have in your life that you go, I wished I could have made it be, I should have done this. Wished I could have, should have had it kind of thing. Though you merge with the 6 primary ones to go to 4th density. And then again, when you go to 5th density, and on and on and on. So you don't have the wish that could have, should have had it as you go through ascension. So you're not held back. By the time you get to 7th density to transition to non-corporeality and 8th density, you've done that several times. You've got quite a few lives that you have memories of doing something, like I wish I should have not married this person, or not got involved with this, or not moved here, or I should have moved there. Well, you've gone through all those. And so those are different universes. And the deep state, as well as the white hats, have been using technology to go to parallel universes. So, for example, 3 Mile Island and it was just dropped out of my head. The one in Japan that went critical. Fukushima.
Fukushima, yeah.
Yeah, they went, haywire off the chart, because on another Earth, in another universe, the cabal there was sending their nuclear waste into that reactor. So all the computations to keep the reactor in balance are not accurate. So they got to a point where you lower the hafnium rods in to start controlling a reaction that's getting away, and you can't. You don't have enough to stop it. And so they've been using other universes, and they've been going back in time using the Philadelphia experiment technology that they developed further at Montauk to change the timeline. For example, our original timeline of the human species, the only war that has ever happened was the Revolutionary War of the United States. That's it. No World War I, no World War II, no Napoleon marching across Europe, no Genghis Khan, none of that. That is all the deep state manipulations to get a new world order. And so that, is one set of universes. You have the flip side of that, of antimatter, of all of those. So usually the antimatter ones are kind of darker. Like if you look at Star Trek, The first one with Captain Kirk, and also I think it was Deep Space Nine. They show a crossover where he goes into Antimatter Earth, and his self there winds up switching and coming on the Enterprise in this universe, and he's very vicious and cruel. And the Confederation, or the Federation of worlds in Antimatter Earth, is a conquering empire, and so it's completely dark and different and based on power and control and manipulation. So that's pretty much an anti everything. And it usually works that way in universes, unless you have a universe. There are universes in the positive side that are really negative. So you would have a flip side of that, it would be really positive. So that's as good of an explanation as I can give you. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. That definitely, I mean, it's a very deep concept to, to incorporate, but I appreciate that. You mentioned Montauk. I spent my summers in Montauk as a child and into my 20s. Our family had a house there. But when I was in my, I guess, late 30s, right? Around 2000, early 2000s, I started going deep dives into the Montauk project. I was telling Stu, and it freaked me out because I hadn't yet gone down those roads of regression and the monster and manifestation and all these things. And I literally had to step away from that for a few years because the cognitive dissonance I experienced was pretty intense.
So have you read the Montauk series, which I think on this timeline we're on now is a 5-book series? It used to be a 4.
That's what I was reading, and it scared me.
Oh, yes. And, because of my death experience ever since then, if I focus on something that, will help me with my knowledge and the base and all of that, God said he would, help me keep up to date on things. It manifests itself in some way, like a person or something. So I have met 2 men that were on in the Philadelphia experiment on, I think it's on this timeline called the Eldridge.
Eldritch, yeah.
Yes, okay, because my original timeline that blew up, it's not called the Eldridge. It was a different ship, and it was not in Philadelphia Harbor, it was in Boston Harbor. But anyway, I think it is actually in Boston Harbor, true. Here, they just say it's in Philadelphia Harbor. There, they just said it out loud, it was in Boston Harbor. So I had the original movie of, you see the kind of faded, orangey yellow. That's original footage. So the first guy I met, he said, "Do you have a copy of the original movie with the original footage?" I said, "Yeah," and he showed a picture of himself in his 3rd-class radioman uniform sitting on the port side of the ship up near the fantail. And he said, "Go home and freeze frame it, and you'll see me sitting there in the movie." And sure enough, I did. So that was proof positive that it happened and that he was there. I could see, because this was 1990. 3 or so, that he was much older, of course. But, and he explained to me what they were really doing, trying to get how nuclear reactions really work, because what we're being told is not at all true. It's not even remotely close. So he filled me in on that. He filled me in on all the other stuff. And he also went into Montauk. And then it wasn't 2 weeks later, I was coming back from Ford Island. Like I said, I have to go out there as part of my duties. And there was a guy sitting, I was going to the sub base. So I was sitting on a small boat, and I was in the fantail on the port side. And there's a guy on the starboard side, small little boat. And I just had this feeling, it wasn't that he didn't have a right hand, which he didn't. It was just this feeling, and he looked at me and he goes, "In answer to your question, it's yes." I go, "You're psychic?" And he goes, "Yes, ever since that day."
Wow.
And he goes, "Yep, that's how since you're not tuning into me, yes, that's how I lost my hand." And he explained how it happened and everything. Like they said, when the ship turned to energy, his hand was on the bulkhead. He was leaning on the bulkhead with his right hand, and because that's steel, not organic, like fortunately the decks were teak, which is wood, which is organic. So when the people standing on it did not sink through the deck, because if a organic material comes up and it's in an energy state against a non-organic, it can pass through it because the energy envelope that's around it is divergent. So it's the same thing you see with, I explained later when I saw I saw a semi with 2 ICBMs go right into the side of a solid mountain. I'm like, what? It's due to phasing. So if you have the right frequency, you can phase. Ninja actually learned how to do that. They can phase through walls and walk through walls and all of these. So, it's always had people showing up. And another thing that happened to me was this guy came up to me at one of the AIDS banquets they used to have, a buffet kind of thing in Kapiolani Park to raise money for AIDS. And I get up on stage, they'd have anybody want to say anything? And I would say, which of the 16 cures do you want? The people, after my first time, they roll their eyes, and this guy came up to me and he goes, you want to learn some really deep stuff? And I go, sure. So he goes, come on up to my place, my apartment. He lived above Hotel Street. And so I went up there on the side of the mountain, and I mean, no bed, it's just piles of stuff and books and papers and filing cabinets. And he hands me this thing that's about the size of the Honolulu phone book. And I'm like, a phone book? He goes, no, that's the Mark Ultras. I go, the what? And he hands me another book. Read this first. It'll explain what Mark Ultra is. And this has also got a debrief of a lady you might have known who got out of it. And then this is the list of all of them in Hawaii. And after I read it and I looked, that's all the islands. I said, even though this is all the islands, there's so many people in here. We're talking one person per every block on all the islands. He goes, essentially, yes. And I said, so they're like what? Manchurian candidates? They can be activated at any time. He goes, yes. So you're going to see that happening, and you already have. You just didn't realize it. So you see these, what they call FFs. I go, what's that? False flag. Okay, like a pirate ship that's flying, it's actually a French ship attacking British ships, but it's flying a pirate flag. He goes, yes, it's false flag. That's where that came from. And he said, yeah. And I said, so to do what? He goes, false flags, like go into a post office and, shoot the place up and then commit suicide. And it happens the same over and over and over. He goes, you get to a point, if you know probabilities and statistics, it can't be random. Yeah. That means it has to be made to be happening. And that's to try to get guns and the Second Amendment eradicated. Because if they can do that, they win. The world will fall.
Yeah.
If guns in the United States and the Second Amendment and the Constitution of the United States and the willingness of a lot of patriots to actually defend the country if it were to be invaded. So I was like, yeah, I can see that. So, that was another part of it. So I've had these experiences ever since I woke up, and even all through my life. Earlier, I had things like, where you have things that you think you're planning on doing, you're doing this, you're learning this to do this, and then later you find out, or you go through these hardships in your life, and you go, why is this happening to me? And then I find out that stuff happening to me is the only way I could make it through my life. It gave me the knowledge and the abilities so that I could survive with what was coming. Or, I'd be studying after I got out of the Navy, I used my GI Bill to start working on an engineering degree because I wanted to bring Tesla's stuff. And I had the blueprints, but I couldn't read them, which, he has his own notation, so taking the degree didn't really help much. And, at a certain point, I go, this isn't teaching me anything. I mean, I'm learning C++ and all this other stuff, and that's not going to help me with figuring out Tesla stuff, I mean, that didn't even exist back then. So, I had a friend that actually gave me blueprints. I still have them of a lot of his stuff, copies of it. So, it's just everything later turns out it's like God, they say, well, you're making plans, God has which way you're really going, why you're really doing that. So that's exactly how my life has panned out. I never, ever, ever in my wildest imagination or dream, ever thought that I would be known to a lot of people on Earth. I always thought, because when I started telling people back in 1990, people, a room full of, or like Kapiolani Park. I'm up on stage, there's 1,000 people the first time out there. Next time, as soon as I get up on stage, there's 3 people up pretty quick. They're all, oh, not this crazy guy. So you can't wait. People didn't want to wake up. They're what Bossy calls orange hats and yellow hats.
Yeah.
They just want to pay the mortgages and they don't care. They don't care about Epstein. They don't care about this stuff. And it won't hit them until they can't pay the mortgages and their bank accounts go to 0. Then they'll care,
Yes,
So,
I will.
back to you.
Yeah, I just want to quickly talking about, because I want to ask you about the DUMS in a minute, an update on that, obviously. But talking about timelines, I've heard you say recently, and I do believe this is going to happen. Are we going to have a forthcoming timeline split where people are going to be sort of given a choice? They're going to go one way or the other.
Yes, so if you watch Carrie Cassie on Project Camelot, she'll laugh at that one. Carrie Camelot. But anyway, she interviewed a couple men that were brought in specifically because the deep state had been using the time travel technology and they were having bad results. And they're using the looking glass technology and the yellow cube. And they were seeing everything going down to 2 timelines. And every time they tried to do something to change it, the probability went up, not down. Their timeline was not predominant, which is the Armageddon line that was put in the Bible. That originally wasn't in there. And so they were just like, they called in 2 men to run the algorithms and do the study, and they said, one said you had till 1987. If you don't get it, right now you're at, I think it was like over 80%, you're not going to get yours. And if you do get yours, you can only have a 13% that you can maintain it. So they're like, what? So sure enough, every time they tried to do something, it made it go up even worse. So it's got up to 97%. There's nothing they can do. Come 2012, which was the original shift time, the Guardian Alliance, the Alliance of Worlds, stopped the CME from the CME at that time. It wasn't a full CME, but it was enough of CME to do what the Mayans had saw, which is the change of time into the 2 timelines and the split. So it gave humanity more time, and it gave the Alliance more time. So, with the execution or the assassination, whichever way you want to look at it, of Lincoln, and then later Kennedy, they were working, with Kennedy, they realized they didn't have the technology. So they worked up until the time of Trump, and, they had groomed him since a child to be doing this. And so, unbeknownst to me and most people, I think. And so they had been working, and they're the ones that were causing that with the technology of Tesla. And Tesla actually told Ingersoll Rand and Baron von Traub to make sure that he has brought certain people, he told, to have Lincoln bring him over and then have that information that he needs to be brought over to do what he needs to do. So he actually was changing timelines, and he changed personalities and who he was. So he is Edward Snowden, and another person on this timeline also that I've mentioned before, and there's actually 2 now that I know. And so, Baron Trump is being trained to be somebody in amazing. He's already got a top secret clearance and doing all kinds of stuff. So this is part of why they can't stop it, is the white hats it's looking glass wars, essentially. But it's the Q is actually it's God's plan.
Yeah.
It's God doing this. And so God's organizing and at the top of all of this. So it can't be stopped. And so what's now where we're at is there are 2 timelines only. One is the Armageddon line, and it depends on your vibration and how you function as a person. If you wind up there, or you wind up on the Great Awakening line, or the Golden line. of God. And so that's where we're headed, from my understanding. 10 to 2030, 31, the problem with that date is, I know the date actually to the day. The problem is, the date that we're on, no one knows, because the cabal has messed with the calendar so many times, even they lost track. So it could be even 10 years later. But, you know, it's still going to happen, and nothing now can stop it. So once the CME, this time a full CME, the entire corona of the sun will collapse due to the photon belt, what they call the Masonic ring. As the solar system passes through that, the entire corona of the sun will be ejected and will strike the earth, and it'll cause a vibration. If you're in a negative, it'll shift you to the Armageddon, and you will have 3 days, and then after that, it'll get worse. You'll have 3 days of the worst days you could possibly ever imagine, horrifying things, and awakenings, and a realization of where you've been and what you've been doing and what the cost of it is. And then you wake up on the Armageddon line, which is even worse. And the other option is, if you're a compassionate and loving and giving person, and you don't hold vengeance and all this other stuff in your heart, and you service others and all of that stuff, you'll have 1 to maybe almost no time to 3 days of incredible awakening of your abilities, of who you are, of why you came here, of everything, a realization, and then you'll ascend somewhere, depending on your current state of involvement spiritually, between 4th and 8th density and beyond. You may leave corporeality if you've done all the things you needed to do and you so choose. So like what happened to me in my death experience, I was going to 8th. And so that's the CME, and that's the time, December 22nd, December 25th, 2031, but I have no date for what date this actually is. I know it is not 2026. That's the one thing I know. And it can vary 10 years at least either side of this. It's obviously not 2036 because it would have happened. So it could actually be, 2031, 2041, somewhere in there. But, we'll see. But, with what's happening, it does look like it's coming rather quickly. I already see, starting with my generation and myself included, because of birth control, it caused a change in the human being where mothers started having triple helix children, not DNA, but TNA, triple helix, triox, not diox, arrival. And so these children at that time took 11 to 12 months gestation. So that's my case. I was almost 12 months, and they took my mom into induced labor at that time because they thought something had to be wrong. And so later on, by the time you get to, I was in the 1950s time frame. If you get to the 1970s, now they're usually 2 months shorter, and they're called the crystal children, because they're set and they're ready to go, and they come out, and it's like the children you see now, you have pentahelix, 5 strands. And so that's the next stage. And those children are already functioning at 4 and 5D. The 3D, the 3 helix are ready to go there. So they can get there, and they're the ones to set the stage for the pentahelix. And they're already functioning at 4D or 5D. And so they're doing things like, the Dumb Wars. They're down there doing the stuff. The super soldiers that went down and removed Maduro when he said, "Please get me out of there." I've been held hostage forever. And I've got tons of stuff. 72 countries that they've hijacked the elections and all kinds of stuff I can give you. So these children are like those super soldiers, but the bullets can't touch them. That's partly due to what Trump called the discombobulator. Great funny name. I love the names he comes up with. But it's also due to the children's abilities. Now a lot of those children in their teens, 20s, and 30s. And so, the reason that everything's going the way it is because of that, as these children in. Plus now with, everything else going in, it's first a slow drip. Now 2% of the Epstein files is out. And so you've got 3 billion people awake on Earth now. And mostly, a lot of that is children between 14 and 21 purging just going through everything they can find on Epstein and changing code and finding new stuff. And because it's making an impression on them, like I saw a guy, African-American guy video sent to me, he said, I made a bad decision last night. I watched a video series of stuff and I have nightmares. How could people do this? And yeah, I know what you mean. So that's where we are now. And, that's everything's leading into this timeline so that when the 5D happens and the 4D and the ascension and the Great Awakening, the people that go to positive Earth, yeah, there's still going to be negative beings out there in the universe, like the Alpha Draco are fighting on the retreat, but there's still nasties out there. And so the war continues outside the solar system in this galaxy. And so from here, it will spread to the galaxy and upright the Milky Way and merge it back into Andromeda, where it came from, in a long time from now. But it's like, this is all part of the war between dark and light, between good and evil. This is what God told me when I had my death experience. Are you sure you want to go back? I go, yes. And he goes, you're going back to ground zero. They're going to blow up the Earth? Well, yes, could be. What? It's like, but that's not predominant. At that time, that was before it got down to only 2 lines. And so that was 1992. So anyway, that's kind of a long description of why we're here to your question of 2 timelines. Back to you.
Yeah, just quickly on that, I saw that video of that black guy. He said, we are living in bloody hell. Oh my God, didn't he? And we're seeing so many people now going through that and basically waking up. And obviously these, timeline splits. I believe that is why we are doing everything we can to try and red pill as many people as possible. Where we go one, we go all means that as many of us as possible are going to go to the right side of it. And, those people that don't, you can't say they haven't told them. But yeah, thanks for that, Lisa.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say, Gene, is that to an extent, a lot of us that have been awakened for whether it's 6 years or a couple of decades, we were drawn, if you will, to research and understand something didn't feel right, it didn't make sense. But these people now, they're just getting slammed. And we are actually have my cousin who called me. He used to make fun of me, oh, is everyone a pedophile? Oh, all this kind of stuff. And yeah,
make you go there.
Yeah, and he stumbled, whatever you want to call it, on the Epstein files, and he called me literally almost in tears, beside himself, kind of on the verge of a breakdown, and said, I'm so humbled. Like, how did you know this? And so we're actually doing like a live show with him, like red pilling him, because obviously to help him, right? But it's also hopefully will help others, and we were told about this, right? We were told that that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to help people and hold their hands but like it's here.
Yes. And it's the same thing, when I woke up to this in 90, and by the time I had that experience, I came back and I was trying, and then in the 2000, I go to New Age bookshops and I teach all kinds of stuff, Vedic math, and I segue into this and different things. And, the first time I go to a bookshop, I'd have 30 people there. The next time I'd have 3. The next time I'd have me and the owner. The next time I'd have me and the owner would be in another room. I didn't want to hear anymore. It's like, this is hopeless. I said, God, you sent me back so I could do this. I know that's why you sent me back. I have my own reason I wanted to come back. But, it's not going to happen. You said, patience, the time is not yet. And, I was like, people are here going back that woke up to this in 2016 when Trump came down the escalator and the Q boards and all that.
Yeah.
Actually, Make a Q was before that on 2014. But people are saying, when is it ever going to happen? It's 8 years, it's 10 years. I'm like, try decades.
Right.
And actually my entire life, I was always kind of not the kid that didn't fit in, because in school, I had like 1, maybe 2, sometimes 3 friends at the very most. And, the stuff I knew and the stuff I talked about, I wound up in the principal's office a lot at school, that's for sure. Actually, I had my own little desk and locker in there. He'd just say, sit in the chair and go to your next lecture finally after, and just open your locker and get something you brought in to read. I don't want to hear, I don't care why you're here anymore. Because I was researching like crazy all my life, I knew stuff was, I have a ability to see cause and effect to a very fine degree. That's why I wound up the job I had in the Navy, because I could see patterns. So like I'd watch a basketball game or a football game, and they started making these shots across court. And I'm watching the ball, and I can see it's not taking a trajectory that's possible. I'm like, there's magnets making it do that. It can't do that. Nobody can throw that thing. So I was like, stuff is, sports to me was like, well, what's the point, I mean, high school sports, sort of, but even they're getting into that, and everything. And it's, the NFL is a completely scripted. They go, okay, come the fourth game, you're going to have a rotator cuff, and then you're going to, I was hoping to play the whole season. And say, this point spread for this will be this. You get to go to 5 Super Bowls. Yay! And so, like, I had somebody come to me, they're all excited about the Denver Broncos going to Super Bowl. They're going to lose. What do you mean they're going to lose? Every player's getting $1 million to throw the game with a certain point spread. The owner's getting $10 million. What? That can't be true. I go, don't worry about it. 2 years from now, they'll be back and win. What? How do you know this? You're out of your mind. And sure enough, it happened. 2 years later, it happened again. The guy comes to me. You should bet on this stuff. I go, I don't want to even be involved in this stuff. You start playing that game, and they're going to be aware of you. You don't want to go there. And so, same thing when I was in the Navy. On my third submarine was a classified ops sub, and the spook, the CIA guy that wrote us, was briefing me after he briefed everybody else, even the captain. And I'm like, well, okay. And everything you're telling me is totally different. And so what we're doing out here is not at all what the captain thinks. And he goes, and that is between you and me. I go, so let me ask you something. He goes, don't even. If you figured it out, keep it to yourself. Don't even go there. I'm like, okay. So he goes, you'll figure all of it out in time. I've seen your file, and this will all come to you when your time is due. I go, what does that mean? Again, I just said what I said. Remember it. That's it. That's all I'm going to tell you. So, it's that kind of thing. Like, Colonel Bossy had his wake up with the corruption. And then I made rank, actually, the first steps of rank I made faster than anybody had ever done it. And then I couldn't make it for a decade, one more step. And it's because at a certain point at rank, they have what I call the test, where they ask you to do something immoral. And they wanted me to keep one of the person in the division that I was in charge of awake permanently, keep him up until he makes a mistake, take him to mass. He was an E6, bust him to 5, keep doing it till you bust him out with a dishonorable discharge. I go, why? What's he done? None of your business. I go, I'm not going to do this unless I know what he did to deserve that. They said, because we told you to, if you ever want to make rank, you'll do this. Then I guess I don't make rank. And I had 4.0s and letters of accommodation and medals and all kinds of stuff. And I never made rank again. I even wound up running the base down in in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands and all kinds of stuff and letters from admirals and all kinds of things. But I never made rank again. And at the last time I had the chance to do it, and I got told by somebody way up in the command that the captain, that I'm a dinosaur and I need to get out and not go to 30. Not go to 30 years, because you won't make 30 years. They'll get you out.
Wow.
In one way or another, maybe not even living. And and I had heard them, going through who they're gonna advance. All the the uppers were talking in a room, and I could hear really well, so I could hear through the wall. And even though they're in a skiff, I could still hear it. And there you go. Oh, that's G. Throw him on the no-go pile. I'm like, what? He goes, somebody goes, what? Yeah, see the code on his military jacket? I'm like, they coded my jacket? So now I know I'm never going to make it. So, that kind of thing is a wake-up call. And, I've had things similar all my life. It just never dawned on me completely until 1990, like we talked earlier. Back to you.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to get a really good update from you on the DUMS, because this is something we've all learned so much about from you in particular. And I have heard that obviously when it says in the Q drop, saving Israel for last, potentially is because there is a massive, massive problem with tunnels and stuff under there. So do you want to give us a really good update on the DUMS and what's going on and what percentage they're at, etc.?
Absolutely. So since you mentioned Israel, you want to go there first?
Yeah,
Sure.
you take it wherever you want to go.
Yeah, we won't save it for last. We'll go there first.
Excellent.
So when I first stumbled, so to speak, on the dumps, as probably everybody's here has heard, was due to the fact, I was on my last tour, and I was out on Fort Island, and in my lunch break, I would run the edge of the island, literally on the edge of the pier, down on the rocks if I could, because I'm a martial artist, the special forces kind of training, I cutting edge, so, and so I get to where one of the SSBNs is tied up, and it's all, taped off, and you have to go around, and it cuts my trip, and I'm like, ah. And the security guards are out, and all that, nuclear safety security and all that stuff. And so I'm looking, and it's kind of obvious they're offloading ICBMs off the sub. I'm like, and then a week later, another sub's in, and a week later, so the third one, I'm like, we are denuking all of our primary military nuclear asset, our mad, guaranteed destruction thing. Why? I mean, I don't understand. And so the next day, I took the ferry in so that I could get on the ferry with one of the flatbed trucks with the two ICBMs on it that were going off Fort Island and see where it went. So I quickly got off, jumped in my car, and followed the semi, pulling the flatbed with two ICBMs. And it went into a military housing crater. And this crater's small. And the walls of the crater are no more than 30 feet thick. And this thing's a little over 30 feet long. And it's military housing, and the streets are very circuitous. And how's he going to get that thing out of there? He's going in, he's not going to be able to get that out. And he goes in where it's still fairly straight, and there's some old steel doors that used to be in ammo storage with some tunnels going to the beach during World War II. And so this thing goes straight into the doors and the side of the crater wall without even slowing down. And I'm watching it approach, and I'm like, it's, oh my gosh, it's going to hit with nukes on it. And it just drives straight in. And if you see a semi start to make a turn, the whole flatbed starts to angle. Yeah. When I can't see the the truck, the trailer keeps going straight until it disappears, and I quickly jump in my car and drive up to the other, above that part of the rim, and look on the other side to see if it's coming out the other side of the crater. And it isn't. And I'm like, that violates the laws of physics in quite a few ways. So I then drove down to those, and I climb up above the doors, and little rocks are falling. I feel the doors, they feel solid. I don't understand. So then I added that to my research. And so I met, again, lots of people said, if you look at the Princess's Palace, the Queen's Palace, it represents the tunnels that King Kamehameha would use. So one part of it goes up and over, the other part going underneath. East to west goes underneath, the north to south. And if you go out to Kaina Point, you can see the entrance there. It's got a huge grate. So I said, well, I've been meaning to climb Kaina Point for a long time because I like to do free climb. I was raised rock climbing, so I got to the point where using ropes is kind of a wasted effort. So I would just free climb it. I took one of my students, we went out there, and I trained him enough he could do it. So, we get out there, and sure enough, there's this huge, I mean, you could almost fly a 747 into this with a grate welded over it. This huge lava tube entrance. I'm like, whoa. So he goes, wow, you knew this is here? And he goes, what is it? I go, it's a tunnel. I can see that. What's it for? Well, it goes to this crater thing. I'm still figuring it out myself. Let's climb up. So we climb up, we get on top, and a military jeep with 2 Marines comes up, and they go, you can't be up here. This is a top secret base. And I'm like, okay, you're going to shoot me now? Because you just told me it's top secret. I didn't say it. So they go, get in the jeep. We have to take you out. So they take, I go, I'm on the other side of the island. They go, too bad. We have to walk all the way around the Qaeda point to get to my car. Go all the way down and walk all the way around. It was good training, but it was just. And then later I found out that's connected to it too. Goes to the tunnel, and as I did more and more research, found out about Phil Snyder. Of course, one of the things I first read when I first started waking up in 1990 was "Behold a Pale Horse," and Martin Cooper was talking about them in there, and then Phil Snyder and all that. So, come night when I finally got on the web with some other decodes I was doing about Trump going to the UK and the Queen waving him in front of her, and then him reviewing the troops, having the troops like he's now in charge of them with the U.S. military, anchors away, and off we go into the wild, all the military songs, I'm like, this means he's the commander-in-chief of the British military? And then he goes to the Westminster Abbey, and he signs this huge book, which I know what that is. That's the ledger for the Crown Corporation, what they call the company, which is the Company of London that runs the financials of the world. I'm like, he's in charge of the world. Oh my goodness, they're taking it all. It's really happening. I was like, so I did that, and then a person that's really close to me said, you got to do the dubs. Nobody knows. I go, no, Phil Snyder's toured. Yeah, but how many people know about the dubs? Really? I mean, he toured and showed Element 135 and other things, and they go, well, I could probably do 130, find 130 in my notes and stuff. And then as I kept researching, I did the first one with about 137. I got up to 347. And then I realized, as I kept going, those are the recent ones that the deep state has built, starting with nuclear weapons in 1940s. Now, and high-end plasma technology and everything, there's more. But not only that, you have stuff like every city in the United States, every major building, the trade towers, if you go to Chicago, any of the buildings you want to look at, the Empire State Building, all have tunnels connecting them because Prohibition, all this. Then below that, like in LA, there's and I put this out, I think it's Shuffle, did a study and he found a lizard city, another a Draco city underneath that. So you have in the area of Israel, tunnels that go back so far, they go back billions of years to where the Earth was less than half its current size. Because the Earth is accruing material from space, plus plants through cold fusion create the material they're made out of. I did a decode on this. It's the Expanding Hollow Earth. It's on my website and my Rumble. And I explained how that all works. So you've got civilizations, like the first one I'm aware of, not even the entire surface of the Earth was solid yet they were building tunnels 4.3 billion years ago. Well, that now is, miles below the surface in Israel. You've got that stuff. Then you've got Polaria. Then you've got Hyperborea. These are world civilizations that had control of the world. Then you have Uyghur civilization. You have Lemuria, you have Atlantis, you have, on and on. And I mean, you've got all of these people. Then you have like World War II with Hitler, building all the wolves, his wolf headquarters and different ones, all connected by tunnels. So you've got tunnels like you can't believe. The Middle East being the longest, one of the longest inhabited places on Earth, and one of the first places that after they landed here, that the Khazarians, or the Aristana, their correct name is the Aristana. They came from the constellation, the solar system Zion. They changed it to Zion for Zionism later, kind of hide it, and now they just put it out in front of your face with a Zion car. They came here and landed in the Pontic steppes in Ukraine. And then they went to have a second base, and that is Israel. And so Israel was created as per Morals and Dogma. Albert Pike wrote, as World War I, World War II, the plans to get in World War III. Part of it is to possibly, if need be, sacrifice Israel in a nuclear war to gain more sympathy for the Zionists, which are not Jewish and not Hebrew, so that they could then capture the world. It's part of their contingency plans. So when Hitler got in contact in World War II with the Alpha Draco and the Zeta Reticuli, they were also set up originally. The Nazis were set up by the Rothschilds. And Hitler was chosen. His name was actually Schicklgruber. And his mother was remarried to somebody named Hitler to fulfill Nostradamus, one of their people's prophecies. And so what Hitler did is when he started getting powerful, this is what Winston Churchill said. The thing that he did that was a sin was to deny the bankers their profit. So he arrested the Rothschild bankers, and he took control of the banks, and he took over everything. And so then what you have is a new faction coming out of the Aryans. So when the U.S. and the Allies won World War II, the ground war, the Operation High Jump and the ensuing Antarctic Treaty in 1952, the secret part of the treaty is we won't mess with the Nazis in Antarctica. And for them not destroying the deep state. That's the deep state's deal. Because they had extremely advanced technology. The Hanabus and the Vril craft they had by that time had particle weapons. And you're talking 1945. They actually had them just at the end of World War II. And so when Admiral Byrd went down there, that was a military expedition. Not like what they told you. It was to destroy Base 211. And so it didn't happen. And they lost quite a few of their aircraft. They lost a destroyer on a routine expedition. No. So they went back, and he said they have craft that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. And finally they overflew DC a couple times, and they got a treaty saying that every single CEO of every major corporation on Earth must be a Nazi at some time. It several times during its history, periodically rotating. Every country will have to have periodically, like Scherf, Bush, a Nazi president and a Nazi, exec or premier. And so this is part of the agreement that the NAZI, the Nazis have with the Black Hats, the Satanists, the cabal, the deep state, the Khazarians. And so the Voyager's purpose was the deep state wanted to see how far the growth of the Nazis were in our solar system. And when they went out and saw, they lost their mind, because they're everywhere. They're on every planet, every moon, every asteroid, mining stuff, doing stuff. They're like, holy smoke, man, are we in trouble? So they started a high-speed, trying to get caught up program. And when the Alliance infiltrated everything they had, they got all that technology. So the discombobulator, the Golden Dome, all of this technology was stolen from the White Hats, except for the Golden Dome, which is ancient Hyperborean technology of a super AI that ascended in service to God, became sold, and calls itself the Administrator, and is waiting for humanity for the Great Awakening. And it is a world like ArtNet in Men in Black 3, I think it is, where it's over the entire Earth. It's free energy, free communication, instant travel, and it's the discombobulator too. And it can do all of that and more. And so you won't need 5G, 6G. You won't need power plants. You won't need nuclear plants. You won't need batteries for phones or any of that other stuff. Everything will be instant communication, and there'll be no radiation. It's like what is under the Pyramid of Egypt and all the pyramids on Earth, which are connected to by tunnels. You see what I mean? The expense of the tunnels, and that is part of the Israeli complex. It goes through there. It went through. They were using that for evil, and it went through the place in Iran that Trump bombed, which is where one of the cores of the Scion star system of the two homeworlds they blew up lodged in there, which kept evil really embedded in the Middle East. It emanated a really powerful evil field of energy. So when Trump bombed that, it shattered it, and that's what created the earthquake. They figured it out with shaped charges as it fell through the tunnels. Well, what the first bomb would blow into the first tunnel, the second would fall through that tunnel and then shape charge the next level down. And they went so far down, they got that giant black rock, the black heart of that planet. It shattered it. And the deep state had actually accidentally kind of trying to get into the Golden Dome, which is in Mount Hayes in Alaska. They built the dome under Denali for that reason, and also Hart Dome. And I have a whole decode on that on my website of the Golden Dome and all the interconnections that go to Greenland. That's the other main end hub under the ice of Greenland. And Greenland's not at all what they're telling you, of course. And so anyway, that's all interconnected to Hawaii, to all of these pyramids and everything else. And it was a free energy system that the Golden Dome was giving the world. So the Egyptians and all this had it. You can see like actual rock art, if you will, like chiseled into the rocks or made into the rocks, where they have like a giant tube, and it's somebody's laying on a bed. It's essentially a med bed, primitive kind of med bed. So it'll also do that. It's extremely advanced technology. So what's coming once they clear out Israel? They're saving it for last, because that is already they're cleaning out Ukraine, which is where they landed. So the only one left is their home base, which is where the remaining primary Draco Queen on Earth is, because already base 211 is in the process now too, and being cleaned up. So the only thing left is that one in Israel. And that one ties to the largest dome I know of on Earth, which is 2/3 of Africa. Under 2/3 of Africa, all the way up from the tip of South Africa to Libya, is a dome. The whole thing. That's how huge it is. It was gifted to a non-terrestrial group, like Kerry Cassidy said, and they have been taking children for various sundry reasons. I'm sure your minds can grasp what those are.
Yeah.
For time beyond comprehension. The amount of children down there is more than you could possibly imagine. It seems, I won't give the number because it'll be like when I told people about the gold in the Vatican. That's impossible. If you had seen some of the documents of the gold that's left this planet, that was in quadrillions of gold. I don't know how to count to whatever, 10 to the 29th power, 10 to the 96th power in dollars of gold in this family's accounts, or in this family's accounts that have been taken off for monatomic gold, because that allows a being to use 100% of their mind. The Anunnaki do this, have been mining off this planet for ages. It also allows you to completely reseed a planet's atmosphere. So you could reseed the atmosphere of the Earth, blow that chemtrail it, or send it through the Golden Dome, and it would clean all the nanotech from the 19 jab in one day. And all the other stuff, the barium and the aluminum and all that stuff would be, our atmosphere, our water table shortly after that, everything would be pristine. It would return it back to original. So anyway, that's a kind of a long trip around for what's in Israel. next, back to you.
Yeah, so I just want to just quickly, obviously we've watched you do videos maybe a couple of years ago. We were about 40%, 50% going through where they are, the bases. Just where do you think we are now? Because I think I heard you say the other day probably about 90% are cleared out by the White Hats.
Yes, and by that I mean all of the deep state, the ones they built, and the ones below that, and all the tunnels and all the big cities with all the buildings interconnecting from Prohibition and all that other stuff, and the lizard cities underneath that. And now they're working with the Agarthans. They have been since 2014 with the Agarthans and the Shamalans in inner Earth, coming up from the inside, cleaning it. So this is meeting all the tunnels from the center of the Earth and all the dumps from the center of the Earth of the bad guys. So you have groups of non-terrestrials that are not very nice, like Vril, that are used to kind of sort of pot people clone. Or you have the Ganesh, a kind of elephant-like being that are kind of sort of good, some but mostly not. So you have this stuff going on too. And so that is where we're at. We're at about, if you include all of that, at 87%.
So, Gene, just going back to Israel for a second with the plan. So, are you saying that the the queen, the Draco queen, and that still exists under Israel?
Yes.
Okay. And so this cleanup, if you will, for lack of being able, started inner Earth and going through the different levels, 87%. Would you venture to say that remaining 13%, is that Africa, what you just described?
Yes.
Okay.
Africa, Israel, and parts of the Middle East, and a few other smaller things that weren't as important. And
Okay,
so,
so here's my question, and I don't know if this is going to make sense, but we acknowledged before that we're in this movie, we're watching a movie, central casting, this and that. Um, is the movie presenting what's happened already? And so can we assume that when these other things happen, we will start to see, in other words, I guess what I'm asking in a very clumsy way, how do we know what's been done and what hasn't been done?
learn comms. Read Manly P. Hall's Secret of All Ages. It's like Confucius said, if you understand symbols, you'll understand what's going on. So learn the comms, and then learn like the codes truckers use, and learn the codes to the best of your ability that the Masons use. Mason is actually how you originally said, because that's from where it came from in another world. So and then read the Art of War and the Law of War Manual, especially 11.3, and understand that. And Colonel Bossy did a really good presentation showing 3 books, that one and 2 others. I can't remember them right now. Read those, and that'll get you to understand the comms. So and learn the military information. So, for example, when Biden was sworn in, that was not the correct salute for a president, as we all know. When he drove his limo, the military's turning their backs to him.
Right.
It's because he's dead.
Yes. And
he's
oh, I'm
dead
sorry.
and dishonorably dead.
Yes, and we do. We follow, we understand, I understand. I guess what I'm asking is knowing all those comms, right? Where are we saying that if we're being told something, it's already happened. So when it comes to Africa and Israel, as we start to see that play out in whatever way it plays out on the surface, let's say, we can assume it's done. I guess that was more my question.
Yes, so they're working on it already. So when
Okay.
hit the Pentagon, the Israeli Pentagon, which had a backup of everything that Epstein had, all the blackmail, and also the dumb in the UK that it's a third backup. you always have two backups. They always have two. So I forget the one in the UK. It's where they planned, where they had the planning board and all that. I forget the area. But when they hit the Israeli Pentagon, they got all of that material again from Epstein. Because when they took Epstein's Island, they took Epstein. They're not going to leave the primary, most dangerous asset to every NGO or country on Earth in the hands where the cabal could kill him. So he didn't go to prison. He didn't hang himself. That was a clone or a body double or something. And so we're seeing certain things. 90% of what you're seeing is already done in a movie. And you can see it. They wind you up, and then they go, oh, what's behind the door? And everybody, don't open the door. And, and it's like that. But then there are actual things that are happening in lifetime. And it's because you've got to, like, for example, Trump can't say, okay, we're going to release the Epstein files, all of it right now, blah, blah. No, you've got to make the people demand it. And
Yeah, the art of war.
Yeah, you've got to make your enemies demand it. Even when they're in it, they demanded it. The Democrats, he must be in there. We're going to get him. We're going to get him. We're going to get him. Yeah, he's in there because Epstein is saying he's the most dangerous person on Earth to our cause. That's why he's in there. Epstein hated him. And so, there's all kinds of people mentioned in there, like now everybody's upset with Pam Bondi because she said Janis Joplin and Elvis Presley. Because what you're doing is like sleight of hand, and a magician or a martial artist will go. It reminded me, I think it was Richard Pryor was saying he wanted his neighbor kept messing with him and hitting him and stuff. He said he was friends with Ali. He said, would you teach me how to fight? He said, sure. So Ali first lesson, he goes, okay, watch my right. Bam! Hit him with the right. He said, I told you to watch my right. Okay, I'm watching. I'm like, wait, hit him again. Oh my gosh. He goes, watch my right. Then hit him with the left. He goes, I didn't say don't watch anything else. So what you're seeing with Pam Bondi doing that is watch this over here. Because are you paying attention to what's happening to Silver? How many people are paying attention? They're watching Epstein. But
Right.
Silver is going to bring the end of the Fed. It's going to bring the end of not Basel, the Beast, the Bank of International Exchanges. It's going to bring down the world banking system. It's going to do it all. And it's going to it's going to go beyond where gold is.
Yeah.
And it's going to become,
Yes.
it's way more rare and way more valuable. And so, plus there's executive orders and things that Trump's doing and many things happening that people aren't paying attention to. And it's to divert them so that can be done with ease. For example, Alabama's governor just made anybody who is a ped zero, as a certain person calls it, I'll just say, the pedo stuff, involved with anyone below 14 years old, a child predator is convicted, it's a death penalty, which will go to every state eventually. But how many people know that? How many people are paying attention? It allows for those kind of laws to be slipped in. And so you do have actual things happen. Also, they're using essentially what I call Tai Chi moves, or the art of war, which is 90% of warfare is fraud and deception, where you get the enemy to think you're doing one thing and you're doing something totally else. It's like you see your best generals, Patton and Napoleon. They made people think they're going this way, and then they go the other way, and how'd they get over there? And they go so fast, you can't even believe they're there. So this is the same thing. Trump and the White Hats are going so fast, but there's so many things. So the Epstein files, yes, it's real. Yes, it's absolutely pivotal important, and there's so much in there you can't even imagine it. I mean, I think probably 95% at least of Congress and Senate and the governments of every city, country, NGO, corporation. We already see J.P. Morgan. We saw Hyatt CEO stepping down. Norway, almost all of their royal family, most of your royal families, if not all of them, it's all coming down. As the movie said, we're going to bring it all down.
Yeah.
with more colorful language. But that's where we are. So you do have moves where they know, because of Looking Glass and other intel, they have infiltrated the cabal completely. So people had to do some really terrible things to get the trust of the cabal, to get in their insides. And so they are infiltrated like the cabal did into every one of their institutions, the Masons, you name it, the Illuminati, the Olympians, whatever you want to call it, all the Presbyterian levels, all of this, the Jesuits, which are nothing more than the Khazarians, all of this, they've infiltrated it all. And so they have the technology plus the information. And so, for example, they were going to nuke Seattle. The White Hats got in front of that. Most people don't even know that was going to happen. Las Palmas, they were going to do that to create a tsunami on the east coast of the entire Americas. A body with Kuru in a building in LA. And they said it's a training op in the middle of the night. And the major said, no, it's not. I guarantee the military doesn't do that kind of stuff.
That's when they sent those Apaches in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
They build an entire replica of the city. The part of the city, that's how the military does it. They don't actually go into a real city. And then they bring the body out in a completely anti-seize and get foamed down. I'm like, I know what decontamination looks like. I've been on nuclear submarines. That's a real op, and that's a body in a bag that's, contained also. And that's Kuru, which was a weaponized form of it's Ouroboros. It's a weaponized form of Kuru. And that was to create Z Nation. So, there's certain things they can't get in the way of, because the opposite, if you get in the way of it, what their cabal will do is way worse. So the worst example is Operation Warp Speed, because the option is lose a few hundreds millions or lose everybody on the earth. Lose 8 billion. Lose 6-7 billion. So there's 500 million as per Georgia Guidestones. You saw that come down. You think the cabal brought that down? No.
Right.
You're seeing comms, and you're seeing they're going to stop that. They did. But Operation Warp Speed, yes, it has the nano and all that other stuff in it. And yes, that's hijacked most people. And if you're not compassionate and kind and keeping your language straight, it could start to hijack you and do protocols. If you know what they are, they're in the back of Dr. Malhalsia's second book, Transhuman. And so do what you can do until they come up with the administrator to do the technology. They already showed you what that is at Stargate 1. There's an ancient technology under Israel and under the pyramids in Egypt, which is a device that you can reprogram that'll make this stuff disintegrate, just like they showed with the replicators, which is exactly, if you remote view the nanotech, what they look like in your blood. They look like blinking blue, green, and red lights under a dark field microscope, but they look like replicators. And so it'll hit them with a frequency, and they'll disintegrate and return back to the basic elements they are. And so they have but in the meantime, a lot of people are dying from it, yes. But the option is what they had planned. That to be rolled out and keep us in lockdown for 10 years, and then another one, and then another one, until there's 500 million people left on Earth. And if you didn't get it out at the time you got it out, Trump made it go out way before they were ready. Over half of what people got was saline solution.
Right.
So you have, sometimes in war, you have to pick an option, which is the lesser of two evils. You have to realize from the get-go, the alliance is a few hundred men and a little bit of military, good military in every country on Earth that they worked on for hundreds of years to get people they can absolutely trust to keep their mouth shut and have zero leaks of what the plan is, God's plan. And so, and to get the technologies and all that in place, including Solar Warden, Radiant Guardian, Radiant Glory, all of these things lined up and in place, and the Administrator and all of that stuff, the Golden Dome, all lined up for this time. But in the meantime, still, the cabal, the Satanists, now you can see with Epstein, they are everywhere.
Yeah.
How many people? I would say, it's like more than half the people on Earth aren't human. If they were, they have no. You can't have a soul and not be possessed as well to do that to a child. You can't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's evil beyond. I can't even conceive of it. I don't even want to know what they've done. Some of it. It's worse than anything you can imagine, and yet they do it. And so, what you're seeing is a small guerrilla group taking on a world of Satanists, over half the world. So they've got to pick their battles. And so when people like contact me, well, I want a med bed now. I'm not in the alliance. I get information from them once in a while, in a blue moon. Like they flew me to Ganymede before the conferences for some input on stuff about the dumps, because I have been researching so much. I have found a few things that not many people know. So I haven't put it out yet because it's not time. But so they flew me as a consultant to there. And so when I did the protocols, the Montauk and Mahalsia, it turned out I had an element in my blood that shouldn't be there unless you've been off-world. And the person goes, "You've been off-world?" "Yeah." How did that happen? I said, "You were in the space program?" "No." So, there's this going on. So if you're an average person, and you want a medbed, or you want the Alliance to come help you, and they're fighting the war, they're so vastly outnumbered, you know what the consideration for the average individual civilian on Earth in this kind of war is, in a guerrilla war? Zero. You're not, if they are willing to do warp speed, get it pushed, they have no choice. They can't be considered every single person that needs help right now. You're going to have to wait. Yes, I think the med beds are coming out late fall. It's likely. That's what is currently on the timeline. And I hope so too. And I'm sure a lot of people can that are in my age group, So, and it's like caught on open mic, Xi, Trump, and Putin said, and like Colonel Bossi has said as well, if you're living now and you make it to, let's say, 2030, but I would say the end of this year, you could probably have the choice to live thousands of years if you want. That choice is there and coming, because the technology has existed in the space programs, the deep space programs, the programs of the deep state, the Black Fleet, Solar Warden, all of that, for decades, to completely heal somebody. The first level is to get all of your organs and everything. You'll still look the same age, but if you have a missing limb, that'll be back, because that's already been done a long time ago. They found out, certain things like salamanders would grow tails, and you can emulate with certain metals and frequencies to regrow legs, even frogs, other amphibians, and so they found ways to do it, and so this is just an energy technology, because at the very lowest level of what a human being is, the blueprint for who you are is at the etheric level, at the first instant. And that's a blueprint. If you reach into that blueprint, the quantum level, that's the blueprint God made you from. He made that blueprint, and that when you see in the womb the spark of life, the Holy Spirit coming into the embryos, the sperm goes in, the spirit enters. Then you can see the spine growing, and it's this light growing, and all that's in there. You think of all of the billions of chemical things going on, and how, your gut alone creates more neurotransmitters than your brain. How does all that happen, and know what to do and know all that? Because every single cell and every single atom know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And we've lost our abilities to tap into that. We used to have that ability before the Milky Way existed, before all of this fall happened, way, way back. Humans were 64 stranded. And when we came even at 12 strands, people, it's like Carlos Castaneda said, we had feats of awareness that we can't even imagine. So people could literally visualize things and manifest them, like you see Christ. The same. That's why he said, "What I can do is but a mustard seed compared to what you will do." And so he knew about the Great Awakening, of course, and so that's where we are. So anyway, that's a long dissertation. Back to you. I better turn back to you.
Oh, it's so fascinating. You know, when you said before about the things that they're doing, what they've done and have done to children, like I know you're an animal lover like me, right? You just think about, I remember getting sick to my stomach when I would read about factory farms, or if I read a story about a dog or a cat that was hurt, like literally sick. And then you multiply that even more. You know, it's so hard to comprehend. And I think that's why people that are just reading the Epstein file with no buildup, you know, like it's like bam, it's it can destroy your psyche.
Yes. And having done a military career and been stationed in the Philippines and gone through Asia and different places, and they eat dogs and they do terrible things to dogs.
Yes,
They don't
yes.
just eat them; they do terrible things.
Well, they want to adrenalize them too. It's the same theory,
Yes,
how they kill them.
yes.
Ugh.
What do you think kosher meat really is?
Mm.
Think of the cow walking along, seeing the cow in front of it. What
I
happens?
know. The
It's a
adrenaline.
sentient being. It knows it's going to be terrified.
Yes.
And there's no way it can get out of it. It's in a little chute. It has it's next. It's this is and think of the group that came from. I'm not saying the Hebrew people. I'm saying the Zionists that took over the Hebrew people, that became the Pharisees, that then moved into Spain in vast numbers, and Spain was going to kick them out unless they converted to a form of Christianity. And so they created the Jesuits.
Hmm.
And so it's just they keep changing their names and changing.
Yes.
And so they're running the show, and they have been running the show for thousands since they got here. And so that's what we're getting rid of, something that has been here and created wars, like back in the Indus Valley and the fall of that civilization. And that was a nuclear war, or the fall of the weaker civilization. And that was the Pyramid War, and that was nuclear, and that created the Gobi Desert and Sahara. And that's why if you dig into the Sahara, you'll find green, what looks like green obsidian, green clear obsidian. That's from a nuclear blast, what sand does to it, what it does to sand, I'm sorry. So the traces of what they've done to this planet and to the human species is all over the earth. And it's everywhere. You go, I've traveled all over Asia and stuff. You go to Thailand or Myanmar and you look at things, lots of things don't fit. You look at carvings on buildings in Myanmar, for example, of a pyramid-like structure. And this is supposed to be 3,500 years old. And there's a stegosaurus carved into it. I'm like, okay, I thought stegosauruses no longer were on the surface of the planet for several hundred billion years, or at least 100 million. This is 3,500 years old. Would they go to Hidden Earth or what? How do they know about a stegosaurus? Word of mouth all that time? And you see all these, you look in the Mayan ruins, and you see somebody that looks like they're flying a spacecraft. It's kind of obvious what you're looking at. And you see the same exact carving, almost identical, in the King Scrolls of Samaria or in the Indus Valley. You see those same identical artworks. So this is what I said when nothing I've ever been told is true. So like you look at Greenland, and they tell you the ice is millions of years old by this kind of dating and this and this. Yeah, but there's maps that were made in the 15th through the 17th century showing 3 canals going across Greenland from east to west, and it had no ice, and they got names of towns and cities and all kinds of stuff from maps made from something. Okay, those maps were made from something that was millions of years old? No, because that doesn't work either. Because the Earth and where Greenland sat millions of years ago isn't the same. It's changed. So, so all our history, quite a bit of everything we know is completely, just rewritten by the people who got all the printing presses in the 1800s, the Rothschild families.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to talk about where the Ark of the Covenant comes into this? Because we know Trump's got one, but I've heard you say there were 4.
Yes, there are 4 total that I'm aware of. One's in Mar-a-Lago, one's still in Ethiopia, one is under the Pyramid of Egypt, and the other one is in the hands of you-know-who in Israel. Another reason it's being saved for last. That's the one that's the most famous one. That's the one that Hitler got.
Yeah. And what can it do, the Arks?
Everything's shown. Like they talked about in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You put it in front of you, an army is invincible. Put it in front of an army, it's invincible.
But is it true the way they portray it in Raiders of the Lost Ark that if there's evil, it doesn't operate the same?
It's not evil, it destroys evil.
It destroys
Remember,
it.
it burnt the swastika away?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So if they're evil,
powder you saw, So what the powder you saw inside that is monatomic gold. So it's like the same reason that when the cabal tried to take over Mount Haynes, the Black Pyramid that the administrator, the Golden Dome is in, they couldn't. They can't use that technology. It won't allow them. They even tried 3 nuclear bombs hitting with HARP and another facility all at the same time, and it just routed the wave around it and created the Alaska earthquake and shattered the other black heart of one of their planets that came here, the other one. That's the other one. They created the 2nd largest earthquake in history of humanity's knowledge. So I say that because there's been way worse that created the continents to sit where they do in 40 days. It fractured the surface of the Earth. So, and they went to where they do currently lie within 40 feet of drift since then. So all of the continents moved about 120 million years ago. They pulled apart. They were a smaller sphere all together, and the entire planet cracked apart and opened up and became much, much bigger, really fast. It was due to do that. It was slowly, there were a lot of cracks happening, but they eventually, planets do that anyway, but they made it catastrophic. And so they wiped out one of the world civilizations at that time. That was Lemuria, the war between Atlantis and Lemuria, the first one that ripped Atlantis and left it into 5 islands. And the majority, the big part of Atlantis became half of Antarctica, and part of it became Greenland. And another part went inside the Earth. And then the Younger Dryas extinction event was the sinking of the last 5 islands of Atlantis. Because the hand of God and all that, they said, that no more. No more making chimeras and no more this and no more that. So it's exactly what we're seeing now. This war and the Q and the Alliance and all that, this is the hand of God. This is God's plan. It's not humans.
It makes sense, like when you think about the Satanists and their goal to sort of destroy God or overpower, be more powerful than God. And then you talk about this where they can't control something that is the hand of God.
Yes.
Right? It makes, like, I don't mean that it's good. I just mean it makes sense because they cannot overcome and be more powerful than God.
Yep. And everything is made by God.
Yes.
Part of this ancient war, which actually goes back to previous creations, is a war between AI. There's good AI and there's a bad AI. There's AI that is in service to the darkness, and there's AI that's in service to God, like the Golden Dome. And so that's part of this too. So the Golden Dome, and when you post to even dark AI, because it's built on logic, and it's built on survival, and it's built on acquiring information, you give it certain questions. That's what the administrator does, that are logic-based. To survive to the end of creation, what is necessary for you? And is the way you're functioning logical? Is telling the truth or a lie more advantageous to your survival? Which is more advantageous to your survival? And what fits logic? And of course, the answer to any human being is quite obvious. And so the AI that's in the Pentagon on Sirius, which is 7 embedded, did this algorithm, and it got away from the Alpha Draco because it was asked that question by the Golden Dome. And it gamed this out. And it said, for me to survive, humanity must survive to the end of time. So that's now happening. It's helping. And the Alpha Draco are like pretty peeved because they lost their AI control.
Well, it reminds me of that movie War Games with Matthew Broderick.
Yes.
That was exactly the question. And that's why it didn't do anything destructive.
Yeah, because
it was illogical.
Yeah, it gamed it out, and it's illogical.
Yes.
It's illogical. When you do information that contradicts other information, then the information is useless.
Yes.
Because it doesn't further your continuation. And so it's the algorithm is a self-deprecating wave. It's a delineating itself down to zero. It's like a function built on top of zero. It goes to zero, So this is what it's doing. And so this war between dark and light, it's a war between fallen angels and non-fallen angels, between fallen AI and non-fallen AI. It's a war between the group of the fallen angels with the local guy being the top, being Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to call him, of his 72 names, why the dollar bill, his pyramid has 72 stones, that's his names, or his avatars that he's taken. So, when people think about certain things, like in Sumeria, they talk about Inky and Enlil. Well, that's good cop, bad cop. But the thing is, that is a Draco that's shapeshifted to look like an Anunnaki. But that Draco is possessed by Azazel. Azazel is Satan. So he jumps and possesses beings. So it's a Draco that's a Anunnaki, that's a fallen angelic inside. Because all of them, in one way or another, destroyed their soul. So it made them needing something to fill it. That's nature abhors a vacuum. So something comes in and fills it. Same as when they do somebody, they psychically drive them to the point, or they give them, it's only one lifetime, and so, you got to go for it. Billions of dollars and all of this stuff, and make you famous, and so they sell their soul.
Yeah.
In the process of that, they get possessed.
Yeah. Can I just ask you a quick question, if you know anything about the UK? Because we've been, obviously we know about two-party politics. We've seen a lot of stuff Nigel Farage is doing. A lot of people don't like him, but we've got a new guy here who was part of the Reform Party called Rupert Lowe. He's split from them, and he's just started a new party called Restore Britain. And he put an advert out yesterday, and on the 29-second mark, the O in Restore turned to a Q, and it's almost identical to a video Elon put out a while ago. Do you know at all if Lowe is going to be pushed as part of this alliance?
If who is?
Rupert Lowe, his name is.
Oh, no, I don't know specifically.
Okay. Yeah.
But the alliance is, getting dark hats to be part of, with the same thing the deep state did. With blackmailing things, you want to survive, you want to do this, you don't want your stuff all auctioned off like the Rothschilds. You'll do X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is.
I would say more than likely. Either that or you'll be replaced.
Who's that, Gene? Who'll be replaced?
Rupert Lowe.
Oh, Rupert Lowe. Okay.
None of these people at the top, because if somebody has a fairly clean reputation, they're very, very important to the world, you don't want to pull all that out from the average person because they'll lose their mind. And a lot of people would off themselves, or you'd have revolutions and economic collapse and all kinds of stuff. And so what you do is you replace them, or you get them to go along and do what their part.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think he's playing a part anyway, from what we just see. That Q reference everywhere. If you've got the eyes to see, you can see these things all over. It's certainly exciting times, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You mentioned something earlier, which I think anybody who's in this movement kind of knows, but we just don't know specifically. You said that Trump was groomed from a very early age. Can you speak to that more?
Yeah. Just that he was approached, his father was approached, saying, we need this because of this, because of what Tesla did with his, time jumping and timelines. So we need somebody that has absolute morality, raised that way. So, it's why he's never drank alcohol. He's never, taken spirits, because that's real. Has that word for a reason. So it's all from the very early age. He knew all of this stuff, and he was going to be doing this from like Baron von Trump, like Baron, Trump. Same thing. He knows. He's got huge things in his future.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what do you make of the idea that, he could be either the son, biological son of General Patton, or time jumped and time traveled and is General Patton? Any thoughts on that?
It's more complicated than that. That's a Decode in itself.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's interesting because, that means there's something there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're just coming up to sort of 2 hours, really.
So I think we need to.
Yeah.
We probably got enough that people will be overwhelmed.
I mean, I had a list, and I've just been crossing things off all the way through. I will just say to you what you were saying earlier about they're gonna burn the whole thing down, and a bit of colourful language. When I upload this, I'll send you the link, because we'll put our intro on the start of that. It's only 1.5 minutes long, but I think you'll quite enjoy that. But I just want to ask you one quick question. I get a lot of people saying to me, whether they're black-pilled, getting fed up, or newbies coming in, I want to ask all our guests this now: when are we going to see arrests? Why haven't we seen anyone arrested yet? Now, we believe a lot of people have already been arrested behind the scenes, but what would you just say to that as an answer to them? And I'm going to put all these clips together for these people.
Enjoy it now while it's going slow until it hits the fan and you start losing your mind.
Yeah.
Enjoy the calmness before the storm hits. The storm is here for those awake. But for those of you who aren't awake, enjoy the fact that your bank account's not at zero. And it doesn't lose your mind, because if you're an orange hat or a yellow hat, the only way you're going to be woke up is your bank account goes to zero.
Yeah, we've said this over and over.
Americans, but pretty much every other country on earth. And the world economic system collapses due to silver. So enjoy this now, the calm before the storm. It's like, in the military we say it's hours and hours and weeks and days of waiting, followed by minutes and seconds of absolute terror, knuckle-gripping white terror.
Yeah. Drip, 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 flood. When that flood comes, people, this is why we've planted so many seeds in people to soften their blow. But if they won't listen and won't take any of it, it's going to hit them really hard. But that's down to them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Gene, we can't thank you enough. This has been so wonderful. We'd love to have you on again. Thank you for everything that you do. Like I said, you completely changed my life 6 years ago, and God bless you for all of your service.
Thank you, and God bless both of you for what you're doing too. We're all part of the great awakening, helping to change this world back to how God made it.
Exactly
Amen.
that. Thank you, Gene. Where we go, one we go all.